Chats, stories of God working in the lives of young people in western Montana. Chapel Chats is a production of the Diocese of Helena, Office of Youth and Young Adult Ministry, and the Catholic Youth Coalition Board. More info at dohyouth.org. Thank you to our sponsors, National Catholic Society of Foresters.
Hey, this is Father Kirby Longo, back with the 5th edition of our diocesan podcast for the Catholic Youth Coalition of the Diocese of Helena. This week we have with us Maddi Tooke. I'm excited to have her on the show. Maddie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Hi, my name is Maddi Tooke. I'm from the Diocese of Helena. I am one of the many people part of CYC Board. I come from a family of 7. I have 4 younger sisters, no brothers. I grew up in just surrounded by youth ministry, and I'm a competitive fencer, a sophomore at Capitol High School. Wow,
fencer.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, cool little biographic details there. I think as we've been doing in the previous episodes, if you've been listening, we're kind of pushing into the main kind of bulk of the show is the way that God is at work in our lives, in particular in the lives of the youth of the diocese. And so we're kind of maybe just ask you, Maddie, like where do you see the Lord kind of, how has he brought you to where you are today? Like moments of grace in your life, how have the sacraments been kind of part of that, maybe the kind of love for the church and your growth and your faith, or like particular people who have really been a big part of your growth and faith, just kind of generally your story. How did the Lord bring you to where you are today?
Well, like I said, I've been embraced with youth ministry my entire life. My dad used to be the director of CYC Board in the Diocese of Helena. So as a young child, I grew up in the environment of beautiful, just seeing ministry and young people grow. But what really sparked me was 2 years ago, I was at Legendary Lodge, and they began to talk about vocational calling. And a girl gave her testimony about being called to the religious life. And for a moment, I was sitting there and I was like, oh no. I have this feeling and I'm afraid of it. And so I kind of shut it out. It was very scary to me to think, oh, none. I don't think so. And so I kind of shut it out. But then he kind of like would show me these things in little snippets of my life. Like I was at junior high rally and someone was like, stand up if you are interested in the religious life and we're going to pray for you. And I kind of was like, I don't know if I should stand up. Oh no. And so I just sat there. And it wasn't until about this year, I finally just embraced that calling. Now, I'm not saying I'm called to the religious life. That's a big decision that I'm unable to make right now. But I keep prayer and relationship with Christ very close to me while I try to make this decision. So after this, I kind of finally acknowledged it. I began to pray and I started to get a lot of anxiety over vocational calling. I was worried because me as a person, I'm very organized. I like to know what's happening and I want to know when it's going to happen. So I had this plan for my life and this came in and I was like, well, I don't know what to do. And so I began to get a lot of anxiety over this. I was afraid to talk to the Lord. I was afraid to pray. So I went to my youth minister and it was very heart-wrenching to talk about since he's my uncle. And so we sat down and he was like, Maddie, that's the devil's work in you. He's causing you anxiety. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, really? How can I avoid this? And so after I visited with him about that, I joined a group called Discipleship Group, which is a group of women who pray and do Bible study. And I talked to her about it, and she's like, Maddie, focus on your relationship. Don't worry about the vocational calling. Focus on your relationship. So after I heard that, I began to really focus on my relationship with Christ. And that was the first brick wall that I broke down. But then I was at a camp called Leadership Camp up at Legendary Lodge. And I was at a mass called the Vigil Mass, where it's really quite beautiful. They set the mass up with beautiful candles, and it's quiet and dark and very peaceful. And me as a child at mass, just growing up with youth ministry, loved it. I loved mass. I loved seeing the people, getting to know the people, feeling that joy around me. And I was sitting there and I just lost feeling. I lost joy. I lost that gooey, warm feeling of Christ being around you. And I lost just that sense of relationship. And so a lot of people say that's spiritual desolation. And as a teen who grew up in youth ministry and always had God, spiritual desolation hit me really, really hard. I went from finally getting my relationship straight with God to going right back down to the beginning. And it was really hard for me. I had a lot of anxiety about that. I was really worried. And being in CYC Board and always praying, it was really hard for me to stay focused and to really want to strive to better my faith. And so after this, I began to just sit down and think, man, what is going on? Spiritual desolation? I didn't want to accept that I was in spiritual desolation. So after a couple weeks of just really struggling, I began to have these kind of, I don't know if you call them dreams, but like feelings of like, what should I do? What do I need to do? And so I contacted Father Levsock, and me and him had a really good conversation about what is the religious life and how it doesn't need to be a decision made in your youth. And that really helped me understand it and have less anxiety. So now that I'm in CYC Board, I'm still in spiritual desolation, but I still strive to strengthen my relationship with the Lord. And I'm no longer have anxiety over my vocational calling. I just want to accept it. So yeah, that's my journey so far.
Awesome. It's really cool to push into spiritual desolation and what that means for us. Because I think, the idea that spiritual desolation is just a kind of part of the ebb and flow of the spiritual life instead of like, and the idea that like when we're in it, we're always searching for the Lord in the midst of that, and in a sense battling against it, but just trusting in the Lord in that He's taking us deeper, and it's not just like, oh, the Lord just decided to leave me behind. That's really cool. I think that it's just awesome that you kind of noticed the movement there, because so many people just kind of assume that it's not the Lord's work. So that's cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful. I think one thing I'd like to know here, you come from such a great family in the midst of all this. Where would you say, as far as other people who have been at work in your spiritual life, who else has like really been a great witness to you in kind of growing in your faith, would you say?
For sure. I come from a family of a lot of sisters, and one of my sisters actually has Down syndrome. And that's really beautiful to me. A lot of people with Down syndrome always have happiness and always have joy in life. And for someone who was struggling with so much anxiety and just couldn't find goodness, it was really beautiful to see her just be so joyful. And every time I looked at her, I'd just be like, she's joyful about anything. So I need to be joyful about just the small things. And then another person in my life is, with being in youth ministry, her name is Diane Tredick. She's like a second grandmother to me, and I come to her with a lot of problems that I have, and being able to just communicate with an adult is always good. I love my peers, and those are always great, but an adult who's lived through life is really very confidently nice to talk to and just very embracing. Awesome.
Yeah, your little sister's like, she's the star pretty much.
Yeah, she's awesome. Always so happy to be anywhere she is.
Yeah, what a great witness. Awesome. One more thing before we finish up here. You talked a little bit about your future already. And so I won't ask you that question. I'll just say that as a young priest, I'm like really banking on, and I'm not trying to put the pressure on, but I'm banking on getting a religious order in this diocese as soon as possible. We need the witness of like beautiful feminine spirituality ASAP. I mean, it's so essential for the life of the diocese. So I'm really pumped that there's women discerning, and you're kind of leading the way in that in a beautiful way. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
I think we'll just finish with your, if you have a book or a saint or a style of prayer, or even just some music that you've been listening to recently that's really kind of positive for your spiritual life, or kind of the way, what's hitting you right now?
Well, I'm kind of this medical nerd, so I love to like learn about the human body, which is really beautiful to me. And like I said, in my future, if I did become a nun, I'd probably just want to use those medical skills to serve the poor and to heal the poor. Missionaries of charity. I've really looked into this. Saint Teresa has been a really big model for me because spiritual desolation with her is absolutely amazing. So I've been reading a lot of her letters to be inspired. Just, it's really amazing to me how faithful she was to the Lord, even though she didn't feel it and didn't feel that power in her ministry any longer. So just to read those and feel inspired and be like, I can keep going if she can keep going. So yeah, Saint Mother Teresa is definitely a big part of my life lately.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, 50 years of the dark night, man, it's just amazing. I mean, her letters are just heart-wrenching, but also super powerful.
For sure.
Yeah, when they first came out, they're actually like, people were terrified all of a sudden that she was like possibly, it's like, did she even believe in God? But then it was this incredible dark night that she was experiencing for so long. So awesome. Well, that's all we got for today, I guess. We are out of time, so thank you, Maddie.
Yes, of
you're
course.
an awesome witness to the faith amongst the youth, and really great to have you on the show. We got to give a little shout out here to the National Catholic Society of Foresters. Thank you, Foresters, for making this show possible and for all your support financially. If you've enjoyed the podcast, share it with your friends or get a hold of Kevin Mulm to be a supporter. That's the only way we are aware of at the moment of supporting the show. So get a hold of Kevin if you want, or just share this on social media with your friends, that they can come to know the power which the Lord is working in our diocese and especially amongst our youth. Thank you again, and peace.